Sean, thank you so much for taking time with me to chat today about emerging technology, which I know has been a huge part of your career, a huge part of my career as well. I spent over the last decade not only in the logistics space, but of course now reporting on it. And I can tell you there are going to be some big challenges and opportunities, I think, for technology in this digital era to really start to enhance our supply chains and to really start helping logistics providers add some value, of course, to their portfolio. And I think we should start by setting the stage here. I'd love to hear more about what you think are some of these big challenges that are disrupting the industry today and how you think technology and innovation that, of course, you're working on is likely to change that.
Yeah, no, I'd say probably the same challenges we have now is probably the same challenges we've had for 20, 30 years in the space. It's really around the digitization and the unlocking of the data that's around it. We've been a very paper heavy industry for many, many years. And, what's great is you build up a knowledge and a group of people who have all this expertise of how things move and when they move and everything that went right and wrong. And the big challenge is now, how do I get it out of that person's head and into a format where I can actually use it? And, as the industry begins to shift, getting that information out of these, genius people's heads and into a format where it can be leveraged is going to become crucial as we begin to turn the clock.
Yeah, it's interesting. The manual practices, right, have led to a time where now we are looking to make these technological advances so that everyone can compete at the same level that companies like Amazon have really created when it comes to what consumers are looking for in terms of delivery, customer service, etc. What I also find interesting too is a lot of that's going to take data in order to really pull that off. And being so manual and being so slow as an industry to take on some of these more digitized practices, that becomes really difficult to do. And I think for a lot of logistics providers out there, they're looking to start to meet that standard, but just don't know the right steps to take in order to address those challenges that you just hit. I'm interested in how Unisys is working to address those challenges and how to make the industry easier for different logistics providers to compete against those bigger companies like Amazon in particular.
Yeah, no, you're hitting the issue of the day. That Amazon effect that we all got used to personally, where you can scroll on your phone, look at it, and go, "Wow, I can get it here tomorrow morning," and you'll know exactly where it's at any given time. That experience that Amazon has created for all of us personally is now driving a lot of what we're seeing with commercial freight. And that expectation of the on-time delivery, that visibility, that experience, it's all predicated on having great data. And, one of the largest factors that has been driving what, we as an industry has been doing is, that evolution from, we at one time were just a cost center, the cost of doing business. And then, as 3PLs, 4PLs began to emerge, this became somewhat of a profit center. So we can actually maybe make a profit in what we're doing. We can open up space on some of our trucks. We can look at how we're doing our reverse logistics. And, that was all incremental revenue. But now there's, this real tangible shift to an experience center where the logistics and supply chain are now being looked at to craft those hyper-personal experience is something new. And what we've done at Unisys is we've created a solution that's called Unisys Logistics Optimization, or ULO for short. And where we've started is we've been in the air cargo management business for over 40 years. And that's really just connecting air cargo freight with freight forwarders, with 3PLs and 4PLs, with ocean carriers, really multimodal transportation management. And started with the fundamental premise of how can we fix that last mile with everything we've seen across the years and where everything that seems to get jammed up because we can all do that perfect planning isn't that last mile. when I have to physically get my inventory off the shelf, I have to now figure out how do I build up my ULD or my pallet or my bin, get my bin successfully on my vessel, account for all those conditions in the freight, whether it's weight related or climate related, or its break bulk location, and all these different factors that goes into how am I going to build this up? How am I going to store it with the weight distribution? Where am I getting it to on my route? And then ideally, how am I not bringing an empty truck or an empty plane back so I can then refill the belly of the plane or my truck again? And starting with that premise of let's attack this problem. Let's try to optimize where we have our inventory, optimize what the specific packaging is to reduce claims and reduce the overall cost of actually carrying that inventory, building up the ideal scenario for how do I build up my pallet, bin, ULD, account for all those conditions of the freight and sensitivities, again, to try and minimize the damages, minimize those claims that would come in. How do I now optimize where it's at on the truck, accounting for it maybe going on a plane later or maybe going on a boat, maybe broken down multiple times, and be able to then figure out what is the ideal way to load it. And then how do I route it? Considering for what is the ideal routes for cost efficiency, what are the ideal routes for those day of departure challenges, whether they're weather related, traffic related. How do I account for all these things? But then more importantly, when something goes wrong, which it always does, right? Yeah, I mean, this is sort of the bane of the existence. Your plans are perfect and then something goes wrong. How do I dynamically readjust when that goes wrong? And this is where we had to figure out now how we have all this data, all these variables. How do we now make it actionable in a time frame that someone can use it? Because, with traditional data, when you're doing all those variables, you may have the ability to plan it out ahead. So it doesn't matter if a normal computer is going to run that model in 24 hours, 48 hours, a week ahead of time. You go, okay, here's my plan. But then when things go wrong, they go wrong right then. They go wrong immediately. And now you need to consider everything else. What is the downstream impact to everything that's going on? And what we do today is, as an industry, what we've done for years is we find the smartest guy in the room and go, hey, what do we do? Okay, let's pull this off. We'll stick that over there. Get it out. And now you're going out with your truck maybe 3/4 full, with your pallet maybe half built, and you're leaving money on the table. You're increasing your cost base. So we introduced this aspect of quantum computing into these data models. So not only is it, do we have to optimize the way it's done, but when something goes wrong and you have to crunch thousands upon thousands of potential scenarios instantaneously, the introduction of quantum computing to power those models and allow someone to get the best answer of what they should do, whether it's putting another package on, whether it's sending it out 3/4 full based on where it's going, becomes a key component of this solution. Having the right compute power to run all those thousands upon thousands of scenarios and give you an optimal answer. And then lastly, once you get through all that, this is probably why as an industry, we've been, behind a bit because there are so many conditions and factors. Now we had to factor in, well, how do you consume a solution like this? So you have the data, you now have the compute speed. Now, how do you consume it? Because this industry, if nothing else, is diverse. You have individuals who are across all that spectrum. You have somewhere at the top end, and they are running their own analytical models. And we needed a solution that, they can consume and just incorporate. You have some folks who are kind of in the middle and may just need an application to guide them. You have some folks who are very beginning of this journey, where they just may need to integrate it, take it on a mobile phone, figure out how do I now optimize these scenarios without having to have any technical acumen. Because if we went out there and said, okay, hey, great, you know what you're great at? You're great at picking up this freight, moving it from A to B, but now you need to become quantum physicists. Then what? Nobody's gonna do that. So the solution itself had to start with the foundation of how do we make your life easier? In terms of the process better, in terms of your cost and revenue better, in terms of carbon footprint better, but more importantly, how do we now make it a burden? We can't make people who are not data scientists into data scientists. We just need to give them the solution that gives them the outcomes. And that was really the premise, was how do we make this industry that we all love better? And how do we make the process better? And this technology, which is fantastic, consumable in a multitude of different ways. And that's, I believe, what we've done and created something that's incredibly game changing for this industry and can deal with the realities of the situation where we're at today.
What's interesting about all those points, Sean, is it takes a lot of human capital to actually remain competitive and pull a lot of that off. And again, unfortunately, in a market that we see today, in the future of logistics providers in general, margins are shrinking. And investing in more employees isn't rational anymore to solve those problems in particular. And I know ULO and the work that Unisys is doing is really going to help a number of digital providers, logistics companies in particular, compete in this new world. And for all of our viewers today watching this, get excited because there's actually going to be plenty of opportunities to learn more about Unisys and ULO in the future. On November 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, FreightWaves and Unisys will be hosting a webinar together on a number of the topics that we've talked about today and really helping you understand how ULO can help compete in a digital world. Head over to freightwaves.com/events to register for the event. And again, thank you so much, Sean. I look forward to the deeper discussion on this in November.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking with you about this industry that we love. So I'm looking forward to the webinar and talking to our broader audience in the future. Thank you so much for having me.